Tulis.
I think we should pity the entrepreneur who owns Mojo Burrito's restaurant. There are 3 of them, and another one, according to the Times Free Press report this morning, is planned in Ottawa. Eve Williams has been gulped. Mojo Burrito has been gulped, as it were, by one of her staffers, a busty woman named Lillie Stubsten, who is, though she is a bigot, she's broad-minded enough to marry a woman and then call herself the husband, because Lillie, in the uproar that ensued her ratting out her co-worker Terrance Hightower, she submitted her resignation, and Eve's managers said, well, that's okay, you can just leave now. Because that company with 100 people working for it has in its midst a communist and an anarchist who, by the way, will be or is planning a rally this evening at about 7:30 downtown, a rally against Nazis. Now, what we have here is this hilarious and, well, maybe a little bit pathetic uproar over monuments and over I think in many ways it's the media that is exacerbating everything that's being said, and everything, the exaggerated language, the very hurling and noisome epithets being hurled back and forth. The car crash in Charlottesville is called a terrorist act. Well, that's not a terrorist act at all. That's just part of a riot. That kind of thing happens when people clash. Police they're either standing down or involved in the melee. That's not terrorism at all. That it's simply not. And yet we heard that yesterday from H.R. McMaster, and political people in the House and Senate are making statements about it being terroristic. And that's not it at all. But Lillie Stubsten, who's 21 years old and allegedly married, thanks to Bill Knowles, our devout Christian county clerk, allowing his oath of office to be non-operative, and marrying dozens and dozens, and by now hundreds of people under statutory marriage scheme. And this woman is united in marriage, as we're told in these redefined days, and the counterparty is the wife, and Lillie is the husband. And so she left and is trying to raise money now, not having that income in this household here in Chattanooga, after the outing of Terrance Hightower, who's 28 years old and a backer of Trump, and was at the rally in Charlottesville to protest the taking down of the very, very noted and godly and right-minded General Robert E. Lee, who followed the rules of war, who was a man who did not favor slavery, and yet who supported his state when Virginia legislature voted to secede from the Union. He said, I cannot raise arms, when he was offered the generalship of all federal forces. I cannot raise arms against my own state and against my own country, which was Virginia, one of the early colonies. And he refused to do that. A man of great honor, great character, whose virtue is widely known, widely considered, and whose virtues, if they were studied in the public school, would encourage many people of any race to say, I would like my son to study this man and to be like him, even though he was in the losing cause, and even though his side is condemned by the establishment historians as losing because of slavery. Though there were innumerable slaves in the North, and General Grant, the general to become president who accepted the surrender of General Lee at Appomattox, held on to his slaves until the very end. He would not let go of his slaves until he just absolutely had to by law. And this is David Tulis, and we're here at Nooga Radio bringing you an update today on local economy and the free market. And I think Eve Williams should really just be embarrassed at what she let be done to her by her managers, saying, we had one of our people at an event at a political event. We want to have people who work for us who have no life at all, who are not interested in politics, who don't take the slightest degree of care over things that are of public import. And here we have this this bespectacled and be-tattooed Terrance Hunter who went, and he had a very noble and minor claim on the proceedings there in Charlottesville, and that was to defend the statue of Lee. And because he was there and he took one side, we're going to have to fire him. We'll have to terminate him. Can this Trump supporters, who is a conservative and has a MAGA hat? This is David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio.
That's us.
AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Expect a mostly cloudy and muggy start here Tuesday. A few passing showers will move through, otherwise warming up, highs upper 80s. Tonight, a few clouds, lows only to the lower 70s. For the midweek, more typical summertime weather, only isolated afternoon showers and storms with highs of around 90. McBriar Realty is now Real Living Southern Realty, serving the entire tri-state area. Find your dream home now with Real Living Southern Realty. For their complete listings and more, rlsouthernrealty.com. And I'm Sourcine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
I'm Thomas DeMoss, and we've got the cash. We will buy your house today. Need to sell your house? We want to buy your house, and we have the cash to do it. Call me now, 423-834-7321. That's 423-834-7321. We've been buying houses in the Chattanooga market for 10 years. We are local, and we can help. There's no obligations, only solutions. iBuyChattanoogaHouses.com. I'm Thomas DeMoss, and we've got the cash.
You've been in a wreck.
756-6400.
You've been wrongfully fired.
756-6400.
A turkey is suing you out of the blue.
756-6400.
Confused about a business startup?
756-6400.
That's the number for you. 756-6400. Right here, right now, Chattanooga. Call now. Top flight legal help awaits. Get biz advice now. Representation to fight for your right. What are you waiting for? That's 756-6400. Don't sit on your rights. You've got remedies. Turn your tragedy into cash. You've got the solution from estate planning all the way to probate. Act now. Top attorneys in Chattanooga are waiting to help you get relief. Act now. No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win, so win with us.
756-6400.
Call now. Top flight legal help awaits. What are you waiting for? That's 756-6400. Turn your tragedy into cash. Act now. No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win, so win with us.
756-6400.
756-6400.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
My name is Trevor Atchley. I'm an attorney here with the law firm McCoon, Williams, Atchley, and Stanley. We have a show on Nooga Radio called Legal Bites, where we discuss legal topics of interest to our listeners: estate planning, business formation, and business transactions. Legal Bites, 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree? Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio. Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
The question for local economy is this: we have Eve Williams running Mojo Burrito, caught in the middle of a controversy, doing her very best, and trying to escape this uproar with her very fine burrito restaurants that are local economy, locally owned outfit. And around her are arguments and noise. And the question that I ask here, David Tulis, on the David Tulis program, is what's really good for local economy. How do we further local economy? And is there a way that we can lay certain aspects of this uproar to the side? And I think that that the argument is that aggression and argument and noise making are not going to bring about any kind of you might say any kind of benefit to local economy, to people here, and that it is much better if we think about reconciliation and let go these noisome and very exciting developments that are taking place around the country in many cities, and also here in Chattanooga. This is David Tulis, and my argument is that there are issues that are touching on the slavery of black people once enslaved by owners in North and South in the 1800s, been emancipated for 150 years now, and still being held back not by personal chattel slavery claims against members of that race, but by an impersonal and bureaucratic, we could say monstrosity, that being federal power, federal welfare, federal surveillance, and all the aspects of government life owned by government that we have today all across the country. And so these are but the claims of the national government against that race and against everybody in an egalitarian fashion are a kind of slavery. And our goal here is to see how to get through it and get around it to effectively to bypass that and find a way of just ignoring it. Now, I think in this case you have a conflict between a communist anarchist and a conservative Trump supporter who has all kinds of by press reports all kinds of tattoos. One, the peace symbol, another making some kind of Pacific love thy neighbor kind of comment on his body art. Certainly he has a right to be at a public event, and certainly it's not part of his employment. He was there in his personal capacity. In his job, he does not represent his employer. But with social media and the art of photography, we can identify people in that event, and certainly folks around the country are looking at those videos to see who's there, and if they recognize someone, well, there's a personal account to be demanded of that party. But the question is, what side was he on? There were many sides in that melee. There were various stripes of nationalists. You have your red nationalists, your Antifa nationalists. They call themselves anti-fascists, Antifa anti-fascist, and they are Marxist in orientation. They are nationalists. You might say they're red nationalists. And then you have the others who are Southern traditionalists, those who support the monuments and object to their removal. They are neo-Confederates. They're conservatives. They're many people of devout Christian interest in the South and the idea of states' rights, self-determination, and the cultural benefits of Christianity. Then also there are those who are white nationalists who think that there should be a powerful nation state, maybe in the South, and who want there to be a disfavor of Jews, disfavor of blacks, and certainly they share with many conservatives a disfavor of immigrants and Mexicans, Hondurans, Nicaraguans, Guatemalans, and others. They are kind of a racist, favoring the white cultural background of the South, and disfavoring other people, disfavoring newcomers and strangers, and seeking national power, seeking to use the police power of national government to keep them out. Right? They effectively, these are in our free market analysis an argument among kin. This is a family dispute among nation-loving, government-loving, police-loving, enforcement-loving combatants. Right? They want national power to be used for some good. It just happens to be their good. And the argument for local economy, local ownership, local entrepreneurship, and free enterprise is this: that we don't want any of that. We don't want national government at all, because all it has done is bring ruin to the country. The ruin is great, and part of that ruin is against the black man. The black man is more enslaved now than he was in the Old South. He's not chattel slavery as he was then, and yet he is subject to the same kind of depredation, the same kind of abuse, except it's impersonal. And because it's by the state, because the state is involved in it, it seems to be unassailable and morally complete, morally correct, morally sound, because it's the state that's putting these black people in prison, keeping them tethered to the state, keeping them in submission and bound, though not by any kind of iron chain that some blacks had on their wrists when they were taken to the market, but by an abstract chain, you might say chains of paper. That is the modern form of slavery. We do have slavery today because of the fall of Adam. Slavery is part of the human condition. And the question, of course, in Christianity is, are we slaves to sin? And Christ, who died for his people, he didn't die for everybody. Though Shannon Chapman says so, he didn't die for all men. He died for his people. In him, there is the first and greatest liberty to consider, and that's the freedom from sin. And from that flows freedom from other constraints. That would be freedom from the fear of men, freedom from slavery. The idea in Christianity, in Christian social theory, is that there is increasing liberty, increasing prosperity as sin recedes. Right, the whole story of mankind traces man from judgment to redemption. That's the story of mankind. The whole of history, the whole of human history, is that in short. That's about the seven-word summation of human history is from judgment to redemption. A long process, which in the end, the Christian scriptures promise general peace, general tranquility, almost a total absence, almost no more wars. Sin will not be as common as it is today. Sin will not be institutionalized, and the house of Satan largely overthrown. And the final enemy at that point in history will be death itself. Death and Satan itself will be the last remnants of the enemy stronghold that have been beaten down at every point by the gospel, by the preaching of the word, by people such as Shannon Chapman over at City Church. And that's the story of mankind. And so here we have in the nationalist argument, the red nationalist and the white nationalist and other nationalists, Republican nationalists, Roy Moore nationalists. We have a similar idea. Okay, so many of the protesters in Charlottesville are just friends. They're friends having a dispute. And against that whole crowd, there's you, my listener, here at Nooga Radio, 1240 AM, 92.7 FM, and that is free markets and local economy. If we have free markets and local economy, we don't have to have this great pressure put upon us. We can let the pressure out, and that's why I think the idea of local economy is so attractive. It is non-political. It doesn't care about left or right. It doesn't really care about Republican or Democrat. It doesn't care necessarily about whether you worship God or whether you're like Lillie Stubsten, an idolater of the flesh or of the state. Those things, they're more easily laid aside if the power of law, the injection of law and the control of law is not on the table. Right? That's what local economy assumes, that the answers to our problems brought here by national government, brought here by the fall from the time of Adam, these problems are best resolved locally and not by statute, not by program in Nashville, even Nashville, Washington, or even the county commission, right, or the city council. The problems are not to be solved there. They really can't be. They need to be solved individually and in groups, in families, and neighborhoods. In other words, the idea of concentric circles working out. There are problems that hit you. What can you do to mitigate the damage of that claim against you? That servitude put upon you, right? These are servitudes, and we mentioned the 10 enslavements of black people in Chattanooga. There are 10 of them, at least. We have made an enumeration of these, and some of those are racially tinged, right? Some of them are racially tinged, and one I didn't even mention is the Tennessee right concealed the Tennessee statute on bearing arms It is a statute that's unconstitutionally vague and was written against black people. It is a racist statute. So some of these oppressions here in Chattanooga should be understood to be racially tinged, right? Written by white Democrats in the 1800s against black men, especially if concerned with the free black man who, by the gospel grace, bought himself. He worked hard in the afternoons, the time given him by his master to be free. He bought himself, had his own crops, ran his own business, lent money to the master, and bought his relatives. That's what that, and so those people were seen by many in the South, especially with the rise of the kind of terror-oriented abolition movement, to be needing to have rules from the General Assembly to regulate black people carrying any kind of weapon. That's where we have the intent to go arm statute. It is an ungodly, vaguely written, and unconstitutional statute, which is being challenged by Jay Hirsch, by the way, in his appeal out of Middle Tennessee. Well, this is David Tulis, and the arguments for, and we have a call. Caller, you're live on the air. What's on your mind?
Good topic, David. I'm just so sick of hearing about black slavery. I flew with a guy on a plane sitting next to me, and about 34 years old, and he was talking about how I know who my past and where I'm from. I said I could care less about that. I care about today and forward. And he was stuck on the fact of hating whites and slavery. But I think we got him turned around at the end, and he realized, what does the past really matter, except don't repeat the problems of the past. However, here's the issue we're addressing is freedom of speech. And I haven't heard anyone say, I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And that's the problem with the communist left, the so-called anti-fascist movement. And I wish they would define what that is. Because to the right is total freedom, and to the left is fascism, socialism, oligarchies, communism, Marxism, on and on and on and on and on. So I wish they would really define that. And the conservatives, or you're a total libertarian, it appears, I'm not, I'm a constitutionalist, would say the far right is total anarchy, and to the left of that, we have some government. And as you go far left, you have total government. But this is about freedom of speech. No matter how repugnant one's speech is, they have a right to it. And the left seems to want to shut that down. Thanks.
Well, those are good points, and thanks, Mike, for calling. I think as far as free speech goes, our platform has made waves by defending the rights of you, the listener, to make a video, make a phone video at the county clerk's office, at the tag office. We had that, and also when the Christian there's a Christian church that declares that God is judging the country because of sodomites, and has posters and protests at funerals of military people brought back from Iraq and Afghanistan. They were making a parade here, and Mayor Burke effectively shut down the First Amendment, saying that when those people were planning on coming here for protest, that they would be arrested. Well, that is simply unconscionable. That the city would not declare up front that we have a right of free speech, we have a right of assembly. Now, the idea of a permit is this: a permit simply secures a particular place by a particular group at a particular time. That's what a permit does. But you the people of Chattanooga, you, my listener, and your friends, you can freely assemble anywhere, anytime. You have the right of free assembly and free speech. It's in the Constitution. So you don't have to have a permit just to suddenly show up and have friends show up. There's no permit required. You are free to do that. And for any government to say you can't assemble if that's your argument is simply it's actionable for any official to say that. But instead, what officials should do is say this is an exercise of free speech, and occasionally there are clashes. Occasionally people get hurt. It is providentially grievous that someone was killed, but that's what happens, and people should be able to express themselves. And there should be clashes. Clashes are good. We need to have things like that. We need to have people shouting at each other. We need to have people, hopefully not throwing things, but sometimes that happens. People are men and women have passion and strong feeling. Those things happen, and so police should let parties clash. Police should let men and women argue over the tarmac of their view, waving their posters and raising their fists. That's something that should be allowed. And so long there's no fighting or no melee, then there is peace, right? Just shouting and arguing and screaming and megaphoning is not violence. It is not violence. And so these things should be supported. We here at Nooga Radio strongly endorse the right of free speech because we here exercise it every day. We are part of the press, and so are you. You, my listener, are part of the press, and that is part of our slogan here at Nooga Radio, 1240 AM and 92.7 FM, and that is that we report and you decide. Now, that brings me to mind a question. Will you not pass on things to us of public note? And by that I mean, if you have something to report, you need to call me. Right? Call me, David Tulis, and let me know, or contact me through Nooganomics.com, our chief sponsor. That is where I write. I'm a writer by trade and profession. I've been a writer all my life, and have the blessed distinction of being the blogger in Chattanooga with the biggest pen. Now, hopefully the pen is not just big, right? It's hopefully the fact that it's a 180-foot radio tower in Saudi Daisy should not be the point of distinction. Hopefully, and by God's grace, the distinction is that I say things that are true and useful, and that are insightful, and that turn people away from the agitated frame of mind that we obtain when we are bombarded with the press. Now, in Alabama, as you know, Roy Moore and Luther Strange, the Attorney General, are in a runoff, and Moore, as much as we like Moore, we have to point out that he is a nationalist too. He believes in the nation state. He believes in the grievance that the national government upholds for everybody. It wants everybody to agree that it owns the land, right? It owns all the land, and its border is like your door at your house. The border is its door, and it owns everything inside, and it has authority to say who comes in and who leaves and when. So to claim, Moore is a nationalist, right? He is, in his bid for the Senate, there's a runoff next month. In his bid for the Senate, he is very much the nationalist, a strong military man. He's a former soldier in Vietnam, a blood and guts type soldier. He is very much for the military use of the border. He's very much for the idea that effectively says the government owns the land. Remember, government does not own the border, right? It should not have any control of the border at all. Why? Who should have control of the border? The people who live on the border. They should have the control. If you say that the government should control the border and regulate strictly everybody who comes across it, and by its military forces have patrols and roadblocks blocking free use of the public right of way 100 miles or more inland. No, I think it may be 400 miles inland. It has arbitrary federal roadblocks hundreds of miles inland. If you think that the federal government has that authority, you are a nationalist, and you are on one side or the other at that protest in Charlottesville. Those people in Charlottesville, many of them are nationalists, right? Even some of the Southerners, they are defending the monument. They are nationalists. They want a strong power. They want the strong hand of Trump, right? Many of them are Trump supporters. Trump is a nationalist. And just by the way, if you want to know what I think about Trump, I think what he said at the press conferences were excellent. He held off those journalists, saying that indeed both sides were involved in a melee. You can't have a melee with one side. You have the Antifas, and then you have the pro-Southern, some of them white nationalists on the other side, and there were all kinds of parties between, right? There were all kinds of mixed parties. You can't lump everybody together, and that's what he said. Trump said, he said something that I would probably have said at that podium at the second news conference yesterday. Very, very good comments. Very good comments. And then, of course, the press is saying, well, how can you apportion 50% of the blame, only 50% of the blame to white nationalists? Shouldn't the white, the press just makes it impossible to even think. You listen to the press, you simply can't think anymore. And I would say, reduce your diet of the modern press, especially the TV press, which is just confusing and sloppy. It is so sloppy. TV9, for example, said that Lillie Stubsten outed Terrance Hightower. We can't use the word outed because that means that what she said is true, right? It's true that Terrance Hightower is a Nazi and he's not. That's not true at all. And yet TV9 carelessly said that he was outed. That's like saying That's like the difference between the word refuted and rebutted. It's a mistake that journalists sometimes make. One side rebuts the other side. That says that one side has an answer for the accusation, right? That's a rebuttal. But to refute is something entirely different. A refutation is a successful rebuttal that is hands down for all to admit is correct and true. In other words, a rebuttal that is effective and true. That's a refutation. And journalists should be careful about saying that one side refutes the other. All they can say really, since they're playing things down the middle, is one side rebuts the other. The reason I like Moore, apart from his nationalism, of course, Luther Strange is probably worse than Roy Moore. Roy Moore, as a devout Christian, has a sense of obligation to God, right? That's and his whole fight over the Ten Commandments monument was over an acknowledgement of God, who is the moral foundation of law. If you don't have God, you don't have law. And I greatly prospered by reading his autobiography with John Perry, So Help Me God. The Ten Commandments, the subtitle is The 10 Commandments, Judicial Tyranny, and the Battle for Religious Freedom, about the Ten Commandments uproar. And he says that in the book shows how he is someone who doesn't believe in intimidation. And I think you should be like that too. Don't be intimidated. How do we have that? Well, you have that sense of courage and confidence. One, if you don't fear men, all right? If you fear men, and as I think that the restaurant owner here maybe feared men more than she should have. If you fear men and you fear what men will say, you will do things that are maybe not right. You will cave in. Where do you not have that fear? Where do you get the resistance to that fear? Well, you get that from being one of God's children. He says in his book that the display of God's law was not done to make any bold statement, to intimidate or offend anyone, or to push any particular religion. It was simply a reminder that this country was established on a particular God and his divine revealed laws that reflected the Christian faith of the founders. That's and he quotes William O. Douglas, the liberal justice, in McGowan versus Maryland, as saying that the institutions of our society are founded on the belief that there is an authority higher than the authority of the state, that there is a moral law which the state is powerless to alter. And that's true. How can the High Court, in a case in which there were no disputants, right? Obergefell versus Hodges, 2015, how can that court say that two men can marry? Well, McGowan versus Maryland goes on to say that there is a moral law which the state is powerless to alter, that the individual possesses rights conferred by the Creator, which government must respect. And the body of the Constitution, as well as the Bill of Rights, enshrines those principles. And he says that when the federal courts assume the power to redefine words or avoid definitions altogether, they usurp the power of the legislature, which is the lawmaking branch. And that's what happened in his case. The federal judge, refused to make a definition, right? He refused to make a definition of what law is, of establishment. He was unable or unwilling to define words, Judge Thompson, and turned his own biased opinions into a judicial order. And he talked about religious air and appearance, called to mind an open Bible resting on a lectern. And so he couldn't define things. And Moore, the reason Moore is so good is because he will not be intimidated. And that, I think, is the spirit that we have to have here in Chattanooga. If we're not going to be intimidated in Chattanooga as owners of businesses, as people holding political office, we stand for what we believe. Okay, whether we're right or not is kind of beside the point. Is can we make a consistent case for what we believe? And I would say always, can we make it with the spirit of lenity and grace? Can we make an argument that tries to reflect well on others and tries to not take offense? That I think is important. And Lillie Stubsten is all about taking offense. And her rally this evening downtown is about grievance. It's about stoking grievance, exacerbating the sense of injury, making as much as possible about new things we can go, new conquests we can make, hating Confederate generals, hating the South, hating Christianity. Of course, that is this woman seems to have, if she is a communist as reported in the press, then there is implied in that a hatred of the gospel, a hatred of grace. And so these are things implied in that position. If indeed Lillie Stubsten has these particular views, when a handful of people are given the power to override the words of the Constitution and to impose their agenda upon the nation simply because they carry the title federal judge and no dissent is permitted from their opinion on the Constitution, then we no longer live by rule of law, he says. We live rather by the rule of men, because it is not the Constitution, but those who govern it, those who interpret it, who govern us. And that's what we have today. We don't have real law anymore in many ways. There's not a real law. Under the guise of interpreting the Constitution, the federal courts have violated every principle of the rule of law. The law, particularly in the area of constitutional rights, no longer has permanence or stability, he laments. One need only look as far as the law on abortion to see that this is the case. For nearly 200 years, no right to an abortion existed. David Tulis, caller, you're live on the air.
Hello, this is Terrance Hightower.
Yes. Oh, thanks. Hey, Terrance, thanks for calling. This, for the listener, this is the gentleman who was fired by Mojo Burrito yesterday. Terrance, thanks for giving a call. Can you just recount briefly what happened, please?
Yes, sir. Well, I attended the rally in Charlottesville because I wanted to support the not taking down of this statue of Robert E. Lee. And when I came back to work the next day after, this girl who I work with, as soon as I walked through the door, she called me a Nazi, and I just kind of, brushed it off and didn't say anything. But the manager at the time, who is a friend of mine, chose to write her up for it. And after that, she proceeded to take to Facebook and slander my name, calling me a Nazi. And the response to all of this has been me losing my job.
Well, I think the listener would like to know just briefly about what your ideas are, Terrance. You went to an event in Charlottesville which had many sides. There were many sides there, and you went, as you're telling us now, and as it's been reported, to oppose the removal of the fine statue of Robert E. Lee.
Yes, sir.
And so you found people of like mind there who had kind of that one point as their main purpose. But there were others as well. What were some of the other arguments? What were some of the other positions of protesters at that event whom you saw?
I mean, there was a pretty wide range on as far as people who were attending the rally. There were people from organizations such as League of the South, Identity Europa, Traditional Workers Party, Identity Dixie, organizations like that. And on the other side, the counter-protesters, there were, all these activist groups, Black Lives Matter, these Antifa groups, and just open communists and anarchists.
So what? Tell my listener what Antifa mean. How could Terrance Hightower? This is David Tulis. We're talking with Terrance Hightower, the man who was fired, accused of being a Nazi by a coworker at a local restaurant. Terrance Hightower, what does Antifa mean? Can you define what that is based on what you saw there at the event in Charlottesville?
The Antifa is a group. It stands for anti-fascist, but over the past year or so, I've seen them, dressed in all black with their faces covered, and they're always very violent. I mean, I've gone to a couple of Trump rallies myself, and they've always been there, just, I don't know, very, very hateful to everyone who tries to attend, any type of right-wing rally, really.
So you're saying that they're violent, they're agitators, they're troublemakers, and they were at the event too. The event in Charlottesville was at least a two-sided event. There was a protest.
Did not have a permit. Like the rally that I went to, we had a permit, and we had an injunction from the federal court because they told us at first that we couldn't have the permit, and the ACLU fought for us and said that they have to give us our permit and let the speaker speak, but that still didn't happen at the rally.
Well, can you say something about the police protection of your event? Was there enough police protection, Terrance Hightower?
It was basically non-existent. The state police lined up with shields on the opposite side of the park where there were no protesters. We were having to walk through these protesters just to get into the rally pin. But then after they declared this an unlawful assembly and made everyone disperse, the state police were lined up at the back of the park, and they pushed everyone that was inside of Lee Park out into Market Street into this swarm of protesters.
So you're saying the initial protesters...
My sister was pepper sprayed, just trying to get back to our vehicle.
Well, what further can you say, Terrance Hightower? You're not a Nazi. You're a conservative. You're a Trump supporter. Were you wearing your MAGA hat? I guess I need to ask.
No, I wasn't. I dressed kind of nice for the occasion. I just wore some khaki pants and a nice polo t-shirt or a nice polo collared shirt.
Well, we're reading in the press today, Terrance Hightower, who was fired by a local restaurant for taking part in the Charlottesville event, that your coworker, who has also left the business as employee, she's holding a rally this evening with a kind of communist flavor, communist anarchy flavor. And I wonder, I'm sure you're probably not don't care anything about that, but I wonder if there are any Trump supporters or any conservatives who might want to watch what happens at that event.
I've actually received quite a few messages from people in support of me after seeing my story on the news. I've also been overwhelmed with hate messages, but it is really nice to see that there are people who do believe in conservative values and aren't afraid to take a stand for something. And
well, what
I just think it's crazy the way the media is portraying this rally. They keep calling it this white supremacist neo-Nazi rally when that's not what it was about.
Well, you're right. For example, League of the South, which is a very, very mild, it's a Southern nationalist group, but it's very much about, it has very, very fine arguments about constitutional government, decentralization, honest money.
Yeah.
It has a political.
They have disavowed Nazism many times.
Right. They're not racist at all. I know some of the people who are in that organization at the very top. They're not racist at all. They're very genteel, Christian, conservative people. They do favor the South. They do think there should be a breaking up of the country into various nations as it was in the earlier times. But they're not racist. They're very kind of local economy. They favor free enterprise. They favor marriage. They disfavor the League of the South. They disfavor judicial tyranny, the idea that the Supreme Court determines what the Constitution is, and they insist that no, the Constitution defines itself and is very clear on every point. And they were there as well, and yet they're being called white supremacists in the very broad brush made by careless reporters.
Yes, and there are many people who have lost their jobs over this.
Well, when you went up there, Terrance, you realized that kind of thing could happen, right? But you said, I have a right to speech. I have a right to to be involved in a protest. And there may be a repercussion back home, but I'm going to be there, even though there are thousands of images made, thousands of cameras running, thousands of cell phones whirring away, clicking images. And I feel this is important. And so you, at cost to yourself, at travel expenses and overnight stay out of town, you went up to Virginia to say, I'm going to be a part of this because it's important for me to be here, right? I'm expressing myself under the First Amendment.
Yes, sir. That is completely correct.
Well, okay, so you're making the point, Terrance Hightower, that being a conservative, being a Trump supporter, being at a political rally where several sides are represented is not an offense, is not a wrong. It really should not have caused you to have been fired. That you were wrongfully terminated, and you tell the Chattanooga Time-Free Press that you have no intention to sue, because we are, after all, as you point out, we are a right-to-work state. You could be fired for any reason or no reason. You just can't be fired in Tennessee for the wrong reason, such as age, sex, sexual orientation, gender, that kind of thing. Those are reasons. Religious affiliation. Those are wrong reasons for a firing, and you can't be fired for those reasons. But for no reason, you can be fired in a right-to-work state.
That has been my understanding of the law. Yes.
Well, I think that's accurate, and I would say you might be wise just to move on. So just quickly about the future, Terrance. What are your back? Since my listener is the man who matters at this radio station, and you're looking for work, what kind of skills do you have? Just quickly, what's your resume look like?
Well, I've done manual labor. I've been a cook at several restaurants. I've done painting jobs, a little bit of carpentry type jobs. I used to work in a shop where we made fitness equipment called Dynabody.
And you're a bachelor. You live here in Chattanooga.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I don't know that you want to give out your number, but since you are looking for work, my listener, the man who matters, may want to give you a call. I tell you what, if you the listener want to get a hold of Terrance Hightower, he'll give me his number later, and I'll just pass that on to you, the listener. Well, listen, Terrance, anything else you want to mention for my listener? How should my listener view this whole fracas? What's the main point to consider in light of your story, Terrance?
I just wonder where it's going to stop with them trying to remove all these statues and memorials. Just the day after Charlottesville, people took it into their own hands to rip down the statue in Durham, North Carolina.
Well, we got disconnected. This is David Tulis, and we do thank you for joining us. We've just been talking with Terrance Hightower, the man fired by a local restaurant after he was accused of being a Nazi. So here it is. The communist anarchists accuse a restaurant worker of being a Nazi, and he's just a Trump supporter who esteems Robert E. Lee, esteems the great leader of the Army of Virginia, and objects to his statue being removed, the removal of his statue in Charlottesville. And he went up there to make that point, and is now facing harsh consequences, the lack of employment. So this is David Tulis. We do thank you for giving us a couple of minutes of your time. We have questions now about we'll be looking at other issues. I've got some important announcements to make. Thank you for joining me here at the David Tulis Show, Nooga Radio. Keep tuned.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Jim lost 84 pounds of fat in just 3 months. 84 pounds of fat in just 3 months without a single powdered meal or shake, no diet pills, no gimmicks. He is a cardiac nurse, and he knew that if he didn't do something, he would be the next one laying on the table getting stents in his heart. RSVP now to join us for our free health and wellness seminar at 240-440-1379. This will be our only seminar in Chattanooga, 240-440-1379.
A $20 oil change right now at Precision Tune Auto Care. A standard $20 oil change at Precision Tune Auto Care. Hickson Pike, Gun Barrel Road, Highway 58 next to Dunkin' Donuts. A $20 oil change. Precision Tune Auto Care. Go now.
Hi, this is Nadia behind the green door. You've had ice cream and you've had shaved ice, but have you had snow cream? It is amazing. It's light, airy, fruity snowflakes melting on your tongue. You need to come and see us. Highway 58, green door next to Hardee's.
Picture that curl of steam rising from your fresh-made pizza. And in a flash, let it take you aloft, teasing all your senses. I'm talking about Jet's Pizza.